Welcome to another episode of FinTech Focus TV with me, Toby Babb. Today, I am delighted, after a brief sabbatical, to bring you back the chaps over at Torstone Technology. It's Mack Gill and David Pearson. How are you guys?
Great.
Yeah, very well, thank you.
Listen, lovely to have you back on the show. Really enjoyed the conversation we had. David, it was just after you started, I think now probably about 18 months, 2 years ago, right in the eye of the storm of the pandemic. What a time to start! I remember all of the
Yes.
all of the kit arriving in the office, and we've seen an awful lot. Look, everything I read about Torstone at the moment, I'm seeing press releases left, right, and centre. Great news that's coming out of the business. You guys have gone from strength to strength to strength, and it's brilliant to see. We'll get into a little bit of that. We'll talk about the macroeconomics of the situation at the moment that we're in. We'll talk about all aspects of middle office, of post trade, loads of different things to get excited about and dive into. But before we do that, reintroduce yourselves, David. Let's kick you off with you a brief intro, please.
Yeah, so David Pearson, I'm product owner for the middle office and data as well for Torstone. I've been with Torstone just over 2 years, and at least for the last 6 months, I've actually been in the office, which is great.
Look at that, he's back. And Mack, tell us a bit about yourself, and then if you would expand on Torstone.
Yeah, sure. First of all, it was a very difficult decision to see whether or not we were actually going to let David into the office or not 6 months ago. But we got him over the line. And he's
good job.
Yeah.
True.
But yeah, hi. I'm Mack Gill. I'm the COO of Torstone, and been with the company for the last almost 5 years. Very exciting years. For those of you listening in who you may not be too familiar with us, we're a post-trade SaaS platform on Amazon, on AWS, and so we really automate the middle and back office across asset classes, and are pretty differentiated with that. If you look at the post-trade technology landscape, where you have a lot of siloed operations by asset class or siloed by geography or market, we come from a design principle and an approach where we're looking to consolidate and automate post-trade operations across those vectors. And so have a lot of clients in Europe and in Asia, and expanding into North America, and really trying to bring together again efficiencies in many ways. And so and being able to do that on the cloud on AWS is really is really an exciting place to be right now, and especially over the last couple of years, given how fast the industry is moving to digital and looking for new ways to optimize and save costs and all of that. So we're really fast growing, based here in London, but we have offices in Asia and in North America, and continuing to grow and look for really talented people that want to be part of our adventure. And so those of you, anybody listening in that is interested in kind of the cutting edge on post trade tech, definitely we'd love to be talking to you.
I'd vouch for the fact as well that is the growth and the talent. I think talent attracts talent, right? And one of the things that I think you guys have done spectacularly well is be working in an area that's obviously right. How many buzzwords have we heard there? If I was a bingo caller, I'd be doing very, very well with you're in such a sweet spot at the moment for where demand sits, that growth's come through. But you don't get that growth if you haven't got the right people on board. And I think what you guys have been excellent at is creating a world-class team where people can learn and develop and grow through with that, which is probably in turn, dividended the results and the growth and the successes that you've seen as a business. So, yeah, thoroughly echo that. A great place to work and to look into that. We'll come on to what's been working well and your story in a bit as well. But I want this is at the stage right now where on a macroeconomic basis we're seeing an awful lot of volatility and loads of headwinds and talk of recession, talk of economic hurricanes, talk of everything in between, but also a lot of talk about opportunity. And as we were talking about before we came on here, within opportunity, that means you used the word efficiency earlier on. Technology is at the core of what cements these sort of times, and I think there's a lot of excitement about what can happen in the marketplace, despite what the headwinds are. But tell me a little bit about what your thoughts are. What's the market looking like at the moment? I know you guys are still very bullish and positive about what's happening out there. What can we expect to see at the moment?
Look, we've lived through the last number of years. There was a lot of froth, right? A lot of activity, a lot of discretionary investment, and a lot of interesting technology. But in many cases, technology for technology's sake. The whole fintech industry is phenomenal and dynamic industry, which will continue to develop and grow. But there's been a lot of, let's say, investment in things that maybe don't have near-term value. And they say, economic cycles exist for a reason, right? Darwinian cycles. And, they say that, when the tide goes out, you see who's wearing a bathing suit or not, right?
Yeah.
So I think we're the next 12, 18 months is going to be challenging for a lot of companies. Don't have, certainly younger companies who don't have strong cash flow and who really are, maybe we're leaning too far over their skis. And I think that's frankly healthy. For the industry to see who's gonna get through into the next stage. I mean, we're not a brand new company, right? We've been in existence for 10 years. We've been growing steadily, and we have a lot of stability, with 25 clients and everything else. And so, if anything, I think there's going to be a lot more opportunity for proven technology for people that can, they can help banks and brokers get through this next cycle. Because I tell you, the key thing when you go through these economic cycles, and I think all three of us are old enough to have lived through a few of these downturns, there's going to be a lot of cost pressure and even more pressure on optimization and consolidation and kind of the TCO of a bank and broker's tech stack. And so that, if anything, I think is going to make the agenda of, new technology that's proven and really can add value next year is going to be on the agenda for obviously every board of every bank and broker out there, and every head of ops, every CTO. So I think that's healthy, and we'll see how that shakes out in the industry. But
yeah, I 100% agree with that. I'm glad you said that, because it as bubbles happen, you go back to you talk about the and I'll age myself a little bit here, but when I first was getting into recruitment, it was we were going through the millennium and everyone hiring left, right, and centre, and then we saw the .com eruption and then the bubble bursting. And what that was just unrealistic. It was all about a level of unrealistic valuation, money being punted into to something that was going gangbusters that probably wasn't sustainable. And I think I've had a couple of shows recently where we've been talking about good companies will always attract money, and good companies will always grow if they're solving the right problems. And I think where we probably needed to see a little bit of reality was bad money going to bad businesses that didn't really solve the right sort of problems. And I think that's echoed from there. David, talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing. What's your crystal ball looking like in the marketplace at the moment?
Yeah, I kind of echoing that last comment. I think there's always and will continue to be interest in the technologies that will make a difference to any of the organisations in capital markets. So where their focus is on ensuring the stability of their own business, the operational efficiency that they have, from our perspective in the post-trade space, generally across the board, they need to make sure that their systems are rock solid, that they're efficient or increasingly efficient. They can meet the continuing regulatory headwinds that those firms are facing. Yeah, and Mack mentioned the word froth, and it's exactly. You could say in some respects that's not where we are. I think we look to produce a platform and a capability that really is at the core of organisations in capital markets, and we offer an alternative which is modern, flexible, real-time processing, which can meet all of these efficiency targets, regulatory requirements, because almost regardless of that economic swing, every business is going to have to hit those things face on. So I think there's always, and we as Matt commented at the start, we're extremely busy, which is great. And the conversations we're having really are focusing in on what we can deliver as technology into those businesses, which can help them support their existing business, support them going forward with agility, flexibility, and make them more efficient and allow them to their own businesses to scale and flex because that's the technology that they're buying into from us. So it's good that we're in this position. We're not sellers of froth, we're sellers of the real hardcore processing, real time. We're right in the center of those conversations, really, and that's a great place to be.
Definitely. I love the idea of sellers of froth being out there in the
marketplace.
There's a tagline for a business one day, isn't it?
Sellers, yes.
You mentioned that there's something which I think is really interesting about the sort of regulatory, the ever increasing regulatory storm that's coming out there. Mack, I know we spoke beforehand about a lot of change happening in North America at the moment. That post-trade world is always busy, but it feels like it's right in the eye of the storm for many reasons at the moment. Give us a bit of an industry thermometer and of what's happening out there at the moment. Some of the key themes that you guys are helping with and you're seeing out there with your clients.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, if you go back over the last 10 years, so much regulatory change has been focused on, front office and associated reporting requirements. But now post-trade is really, in the center of things. And I mean, a lot of that obviously is, as we all know, has been driven by a lot of the rise of crypto trading and a lot of the associated DLT developments, where you have this idea of T+0 or settlement, near real-time settlement, right? As much as people like to think that it's instantaneous, it's not, right? But we're talking, at least in terms of minutes, it's relatively real time, and that's brought a whole new dynamic to the market with this new asset class. And let's not even talk about the asset class and crypto and what's happened over the last week or so. I mean, this is that we could spend hours talking about that. But if you look at just the dynamic that's brought to the institutional space, which has started to pick up on how to adapt to supporting, these new asset classes. That's been a big element. But then on top of that, we've had, and for those of you listening that haven't been plugged into this, we've had a decision in North America, driven in the U.S. but including Canada, to move to a trade date plus one settlement. So instead of the current 2-day settlement, moving down to 1 day of settlement, T+1. That's a huge change in the market, because, to put it simply, a lot of what's going on in a lot of institutions and with their legacy systems is driven with batch processing, legacy batch processing in that kind of 24-hour cycle, where they've needed those extra days to do the processing and handle the reconciliations and exceptions and everything else. When you move to a T+1 settlement cycle, you really have to get a lot done, the lion's share of all that electronic interaction done on trade date. And so being able to do that with current technology stacks is going to be incredibly challenging, and leaving no room for error. And in many cases, I think it's just going to be unrealistic. And so with that regulatory change,
what are the implications of that? Sorry to cut into that.
Yeah.
What's the implication of that not being possible?
Well, I think the implication is that a lot of people, there's a couple of years now, and we could debate when the deadline is actually going to hit, but there's a period where people have to be looking at their entire post-trade workflow and associated systems and technology, and understanding whether or not it can actually operate to get the same day affirmations, confirmations, and all that post-trade cycle done, so that they're ready to settle next day. And I think, and so it's a significant change. Prior changes, because we used to have T+3, T+5 in different markets, and it's been shrinking. It's been a lot easier to move into a T+2 environment from a T+3, et cetera. But moving, I say, when you move to T+1, you have to get a lot of things done, ideally real time, intra-day on trade date. And so the ability to do that is fundamental. And simply put, I don't think the industry is really prepared for that, and it will involve a lot of system upgrades, a lot of technology changes. So you have, again, taking a step back, you have this whole T+0 view with the whole digital asset crypto world capability coming in. You have this for the securities world. You now have T+1 coming in, and so long story short, the next couple of years is going to be very, very dynamic, with every securities firm having to look at what they do. And so we're obviously very excited about that, because as David said, we are a real-time system. We do have the ability to scale up to that. And that's our value proposition to the market, is that with all these regulatory changes, you really need to future-proof what you're doing, and we think that's going to be top of agenda. And back to the earlier point, if you look at the economic cycle and the cost pressures, there's going to be all kinds of good reasons to be looking at getting off legacy tech, which is expensive, right? Directly and indirectly, right? The TCO of legacy tech is very, very high. And so, the value proposition of making the investment to move on to a digital real-time, cloud platform is going to be all kinds of good reasons of why you want to be thinking about doing that. And I know that comes across as a real sales pitch, but the reality is, given these regulatory changes, people have to be looking at what they're doing. So, and that's what we're seeing in terms of major change. And I know David could talk about this for days in terms of David's very passionate about this change.
Yeah,
I can see him waiting to be tagged in there. So let's let him off the leash. Come on, David, what you got?
So I'm only going to add one particular kind of view as well into this space is that there's the issues that things like this halving of the settlement, the time you have to settle a trade that you've executed, or set of trades you've executed, is, first of all, you have to look at your own internal technology with respect to the processes which you have to do. And so, that's the ability to take your executions and get them through that settlement process, and then confirm to your client on the same trade date. And some of the numbers which and statements which are coming out on this are, it's 9 p.m. same day, all trades have to be affirmed, and that's pretty scary. But also that there's a kind of the whole network as well. You have to deal with in a post trade, in a middle office and a back office world. You have to deal with all of the other participants and the CSDs, the exchanges, and the way that they're going to have to change their processes as well. So not only do you have to become real time and more efficient with the way you're processing the data, but you also have to have your technology able to adapt and react to the changes that will have to be made at these external parties, in particular the CSDs. They're looking at some of their batch processes, saying, well, that clearly isn't going to work. So over the course of the next 12 months, they're going to start reinventing that technology and that workflow. And you're, as an individual broker, or as an operator of if you're an outsourcer, you're going to have your technology capable of adapting to the changes being made in the external world as well, and that presents a different set and some really difficult challenges for legacy tech, which have been built up around, if you like, models of processing that have been around for 25, 30 years and have really not adapted or been modified to this proposed extent at all across that period. And I think when you're, it's a multifaceted problem that people are going to have. And the suggestion here for the US, for the North American markets, is that this will go live September 2024. That's the current projection. It may still move, but actually 2 years to consider, choose, implement, and be ready for the inevitable set of testing cycles. You need to start now. That's really the discussion.
This has got echoes of MiFID II, hasn't it? Effectively, where you heard people sort of take a little bit of a last minute approach to everything, and there was yes. there was a delay there, but it caught a lot of companies really by surprise still. Despite all of that, and I think that the companies that won through that, in my mind, and please back me up on this, but or challenge it depending on which way you want to go. But the companies that won with that were the ones who were forearmed and able to be more nimble and have thought about the process a little bit before. And it definitely, from everything you're saying, it seems to have the echoes of that. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely, it is. Yes, yes. We're all kind of scarred in some ways by what happened with MiFID II. Some more so than others, but it's exactly the surprise that some organisations in the front line had when they realised that MiFID II was not going to get delayed anymore, and that what the deadline they had in front of them was actually going to happen, and they were months out before actually starting to make clear decisions about what they needed to do. Despite what we might tell them, or anyone else tells them, people are always going to get somewhat caught out by the last minute of this. But I think the positive here is that there's an awful lot of noise around T+1 for North America, and so you could say there's no excuse. And I think it's quite clear that once the regulators and the central authorities lay this out and state, okay, this is the program and we're going to stick to it, then there's really no excuse. I think what's fascinating, sitting here in the UK, is that when you look globally, India decided to move its primary markets to T+1 earlier this year as well, and so people just got on board and dealt with it. So actually, the US have got a longer time frame. They've got more tech, they've got more organisations, but there's absolutely no doubt that the EU and other Asian markets, Japan and such, are going to be looking very intently at the program, the success, the merits, and there are clear wins here for going to a one-day settlement period, and they will already be discussing, when that will happen in those other markets. And for us in the UK and across Europe, it'll happen. It's just a question of when they start and set those programs out. So it's going to be it's going to happen, and you're going to have the technology to be able to cope with that. But for now, the challenges are, sitting in North America, and I think you get involved in those discussions. You can see where the pain points are today, and where the real challenges are. So, and that's what we're trying to do, is make sure people understand that there's choice. There are options. We present those options, but there's choice in the market of how to deal with those issues and come out the other side successfully.
And Mack, there's you mentioned, and both of you mentioned throughout this sort of legacy and enterprise tech that sort of sits there and traditionally has been the immovable beast. It's there, it's too expensive, it's too risky to move away from. I think what's really interesting over the last couple of years has been the adoption of this generational opportunity to accelerate the adoption of cloud and the efficiencies that gain through it. If I look at the last couple of years, things that the companies that have really moved well have focused on efficiency. They focused on friction reduction. They focused on collaboration and being able to put technology together to create a bespoke suite for the end user. In this sort of David and Goliath sort of battle that we've been having over the last couple of years, and the gradual erosion of legacy technology, where are we at in that cycle at the moment?
Well, look, I think if you go back 5 years, things look very different. I think that people just weren't. The legacy was just ticking on. People weren't questioning it. All the other industry kind of macro trends we've talked about with DLT and crypto and weren't there. Cloud wasn't as mature as it is now. But I mean, I'm not going to rehash all the things that have changed, especially over the last couple of years, right? I mean, it has been a sea change in terms of technology and everything else. And then you have all the regulatory driven changes that we've just talked about, and there are others. So, and then you use the word generational in terms of legacy. There's been a generational shift in terms of leadership at banks and brokers. I mean, a bunch of us were out at the Securities Industry Association, SIFMA, have their big annual event in the US just last month. It was interesting to see. It was the first one in 2 years, obviously. There was a marked difference in terms of people that were out there representing the heads of ops, heads of technology for very large, tier 1, tier 2 organizations who were, frankly, relatively, a lot of them were new in the job, right, over the last couple of years, and we're 10 or 15 years younger than you'd expect, bringing an entirely fresh new attitude, and asking the right questions, not just saying, well, the system's been here for 25 or 30 years. I'm just going to forget about it and let it go for another 10. Those days are over. So I think that the cost takeout and the change over the next few years is going to be phenomenal for the industry. In our niche, it's happened in the front office. It's happened in a lot of other places. It's happened in our day-to-day worlds. It's happening. It seems like post-trade, sell side institutional and retail post-trade, has been like the last bastion some of these systems. And so, but that, I think that's the change. So we have passed a tipping point in the last year or two, and that's what makes it so exciting, for the next little while.
I think you touched on something there that I actually haven't thought about or discussed on the show so far, which is this sort of changing generation, in its truest sense, generational change in leadership. And as you were talking there, and I was thinking back to the events that the industry events that I've been at, Trade Tech in Paris. I think we saw each other at the FPL conference not so long ago as well. And there's people that I've grown up with over the last 10 years and been seeing their time and time again. But there is, you're quite right, there is a new breed of people coming through. You see it on the panels, particularly with the institutions, and it's got a lot more. There's a lot more excitement and interest and interest, pure interest in the role of technology within it all. I think it's a really interesting thing to look at. David,
you're making me feel quite old now.
Still a pup.
Oh, thank you. No, you're very kind, Toby. Thank you very much.
Speaking of that, though, David, you've often been described as the sort of industry guru of the middle office. I think that's on the back of your Dart shirt, isn't it? But tell me a little bit about what's happening there.
I think there's an evolution in mindset, which echoes exactly what we've just discussed, really, which is kind of some respects generational, but there is a market evolution, and part of that is that I think there still remains, and people still discuss, front office, middle office, back office, but there's increasing talk, and part of this does come back to our earlier conversation around shortening the whole settlement life time period, is that actually an organization operates around a single complicated workflow, which is front to back. It's a trade life cycle, and you've got to in order to meet those challenges of shortening settlement cycles, but also what clients expect of the service that you provide as a bank or as a broker. It doesn't end just because you've got an execution against an order. It's the full package of being able to execute with at the best price through the right kind of mechanisms to deliver the right kind of price for the orders that you're dealing with across all of the products that clients ask you to execute in, but also the fact you can deliver smoothly, that you can get your confirmation through within a few minutes of completing that task. Being able to provide the data and the information flow to the clients in a timely fashion. So not just doing the job, but actually telling the clients you're doing the job. Part of that is actually generational, is what we expect out of the technologies that all of us use these days in terms of our own, in our own lifestyles, if you like, ordering online, delivering online, where is that package I've ordered? So people have now have got used to this idea that they can see what it is they want, that they can order it, that they can execute that transaction, and they can track the delivery. The delivery is timely, and frankly, you get rated on it. So now I'm not too sure we want to see too many 4 or 5 star ratings being put against this, but there is, nevertheless, it's an undercurrent of if you like, mentality, I think. So now people are looking at the whole life cycle of the trade and trying to remove that from the old silos of, well, yes, I've passed it to my post-trade clerk and they'll deal with the ticket. Now you're going to want to see the progress of those, and as soon as something breaks in that process, you're going to need to be on top of that. So there is that service element that people will deal with the breaks as quickly as possible, and also, part of my world, kind of middle office, is looking at the data side as well. Is actually, well, how can I demonstrate the efficiency that I have? How, what statistics can I produce to show where I'm doing well, but also can I identify where I've got problem areas where I get settlement instruction failure, or I can't deliver something in a timely fashion, and I'm going to drill down on those. My tolerance to any kind of failure has to be set to 0, because I'm being judged, and I'm being judged against parameters that I don't think people had 10 years ago, 20 years ago. That judgment is it has been born out of this. I think the way that we run our own lives these days.
I 100% agree with that. I've been talking about the sort of instant gratification that we get from our digital lives now, that echoes in the expectations of everyone running it, which is coincided with this interoperability that we're seeing, and everyone having that ability to have the solutions to hand that they want, rather than an enterprise saying this is how you are going to perform and this is how you're going to do your job. There's a far greater expectation, which has allowed much more nimbleness and much more efficiency and far better results.
Yeah, and I think people apply statistics to that, but actually there's also this I think that which makes kind of human element to that, which is I think that you will actually possibly judge someone for more negatively just for one or two poor particular examples of something where something's gone wrong, when there's been a delay, settlement failure, or you've had to retry material, whereas and that will cloud a client's judgment as to the kind of service you provide. It's no longer good enough to say I can 97% of my trades go through as normal. That's not the problem. The problem is how you be able to deal with the last, and it needs to be a fraction of a percent. How you deal with, there will always be one or two issues. How you deal with them, how rapidly you deal with them, and you've got to have the technology that is able to supply the information, fix the problem as rapidly as possible, and get to the point of success for every individual transaction as soon as possible. So you don't get that negative perception and that negative judgment.
And that constant sort of iteration and improvement in expectation. It's no good just being there. It carries on. Once you're there, there's another frontier to gain from it as well.
Yeah, and this comes back to that ability to be able to process data in real time and then replay in real time and highlight the issues in real time. You can't have something which is waiting for a handle to be turned. You're going to want to process those transactions and be able to respond to your client, pretty much as soon as possible. And it does come back to the way our digital lives have really completely altered our perception of buying and selling at a whatever product you may be interested in.
What excites me about that is I think we're just that we are a fraction into the whole potential of all of this and where it can go and what we can do with it.
Yes.
So that seems like a good opportunity and a good time for us. I mean, we mentioned we try and keep this one a relatively punchy session, and already I've lost track of the time. But I know we're overrunning. But that's the beauty of good conversation, isn't it? Mack, talk to us about all of this sort of I guess smorgasbord of things that we've been talking about, and where it fuels the Torstone story. Because, like I said, the last few years in particular have been phenomenal from your business. What can people expect to see from Torstone? What should people expect to see? What are some of the things you're working on? What are some of the things you're excited on? And what's next for Torstone?
Well, look, I think that it's all about growth and being able to work with more people in the industry around the topics we've been discussing both in Europe and Asia and in North America. So it's been a big part of our roadmap for the next year or two is very rapid expansion in the US and continuing in Canada. We have offices in Toronto and New York. We have clients in the States and in Canada, and we're really investing and pushing hard, to grow and to engage. So that's a big part of where the growth is coming. Europe and Asia will continue to grow nicely as well, but we just want to be working with these industry challenges and being able to scale up, and a big part of that too is proving to the industry that we can scale up and deal with that with the platform. So one of the things we're very excited about that we've just recently announced a couple of weeks ago is that we've signed up with Tower Research, who is one of the largest liquidity providers in the world. They are very active in a lot of different markets around the world, doing a lot of very interesting things. And they've announced with us that they're moving their entire global flow onto our platform and on the cloud. We're incredibly excited about that. And in terms of improving to the market that that a SaaS platform like ours on AWS can scale up, to handle that type of flow cross asset class in real time. I mean, that's a real proof point, in its own right. So we're very excited to be working with them, a very sharp bunch of people, and with that, continuing to scale up and work with other organizations. So I think, and I hope you're going to be hearing a lot more about the company and our platform, over the next 6, 12, 24 months, both, in terms of not just the geography, but just, in terms of the challenges that we're taking on. And frankly, it's just a lot of fun, right? You look at all these things that are happening in industry, where it's great to be in a place that is actually helping facilitate change and move with the change, and not, none of this stuff is a problem for us. We're working with our clients to tackle these things, and that's just a great place to be. So that's in a nutshell, that's kind of what we're looking at. David, I don't know if there's some other stuff you want to share from your perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always great to know that at the core of the technology we provide, we are able to provide meaningful solutions to meet some of the challenges and it kind of demands that banks and brokers have for us. So it's a very positive thing that we can step into these conversations knowing that we're in a good place from a technology point of view, and engage in those discussions in a very positive way, whether that's industry forums that we get involved in, or directly with clients, so we can actually solve for the issues and those solutions. It's a warm place to be, and having fun.
Having fun's never hurts, does it? And I think when you look at some of the challenges that we've spoken about today, and when we look at where you guys are positioned and some of the sort of genuinely, look, you mentioned there that solving real problems and not shying away from that, but sort of running towards it and being involved in tech thing, the epicenter of tech within that. That's a great place to be, and it's no wonder that you've had the sort of success that you've had. So I'll keep my eyes peeled for all these press releases that I keep seeing. It's wonderful to see it. Genuinely, chaps, it's just great news and lovely to see the business grow as it has done over the course of the business overall, but particularly over the last couple of years, and long may it continue. It has been a pleasure, as always, having you both on the show. I'm glad to see you both doing well. Glad to see you've let him back in the office, Mack, and and hopefully we will see each other soon up in town and have a good catch up. But lovely to have you on the show. Thanks so much for coming on. Thanks, if anyone's sat there watching, what's the best way of getting in touch with you?
I mean, look, always easiest, go online, find us over our site, or reach out on LinkedIn, what have you. Yeah. Absolutely, love to engage, and especially, obviously talking to the market here, in terms of the messages for people that are looking for new technology, but also just as much looking for people that want to work, that are excited about working with our type of technology. We're growing really quickly, and want to engage on that front as well. But thanks, Toby. It's always great to chat and to be on here with you. I really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure, and thank you all at home for watching. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we will see you soon on another episode of FinTech Focus TV. Thanks a lot.